JKB back with another episode. Today I'm reviewing Immortals Fenyx Rising. Thank you to Ubisoft for the review copy. Immortals Fenyx Rising is an open world action game where you take control of Fenyx, who is the game's main protagonist, as he or she fights Greek mythology monsters across a massive world that's broken up into 7 sections, each with their own look and feel. You know, in life, sometimes people say, well, that's just a copy of something, and that's just a copy of something else, and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's many different flavors of apples, and you don't complain about that, do you? So, can we complain about the fact that this is essentially Breath of the Wild? Is Breath of the Wild its own genre? No, it's the same genre, open world adventure. However, a lot of the same design choices and gameplay mechanics are taken directly from Breath of the Wild, and there's some, Assassin's Creed here and there. But it's absurd that the character even climbs up the side of a mountain with the same animation from Breath of the Wild. Let's just get real for a second here. Is this Breath of the Wild? Is this just a copy of Breath of the Wild? A lot of people want to know that, and if you've played this game or the demo of the game, you'll say, yeah, this is just Breath of the Wild. But when you're 40 hours into it, you start to realize, well, the game did form its own identity. So while you can't say it's very original, you can say they did something a little different. And the difference here is the narration is told by Zeus and Prometheus as you play the game. So as you're coming up to a new level, they will actually come on in the audio and tell the story. The game obviously doesn't take itself seriously. It's meant to be a comedy game. They were inspired by movies like Airplane out of the 80s and, those National Lampoon movies. So it has a goofy tone to it. Kind of reminded me to a certain degree of John Hughes films, with the main character being the young person who's got to overcome the obstacles in life, while you have the older, wiser characters tell the story. The way Prometheus tells the story is like he's trying to be an artist and paint a beautiful picture for the player as you play. But Zeus is ruining it with every chance he can get. I mean, if this was a film, I feel like John Candy would have to play Zeus, and it would be perfect. I found myself to be very entertained by the way the story is told here. I even laughed out loud a few times, which is super rare for me considering the fact I have no heart. I can understand if some people go into this expecting a serious story, feeling let down by the comedy, but I love the tone of it. Some games out there are allowed to be lighthearted and funny. Not everything needs to be blood and guts. Sometimes you can just enjoy a game based on the fact that it's amazing to play, but also the story can be enjoyable for the most part. And in this case, I think that the comedy is on a level that we haven't seen from Ubisoft in the past. Some of the best writing I've experienced in a game, and I know that some people out there are going to disagree with me, but I'm going to say those people are wrong because this is my review. Welcome to JKB. Let's get into the fact that I actually really enjoyed this story. It's not going to blow the socks off of your feet, but you're going to have a great time experiencing the story as a narration in the background as you play. The cutscenes, however, they're okay. Sometimes the actors on screen aren't so great. It's hard to have every actor in a game be as good as everybody else. Sometimes there's actors that stand out, and Prometheus and Zeus definitely steal the show here in terms of the acting. So overall for the story, oh my god, I mean, every turn you get a good little one-liner here, a good one-liner there, and then you run into characters in the actual world that just add to it, and then sometimes subtract. So if I had to base this game just on the story, I'd say it is definitely worth playing just for the story, just to enjoy sort of a different spin on this mythology. Now, like I said, the game is essentially Breath of the Wild. However, you do have 7 different sections on the map. Now, the map itself is gigantic. I mean, Breath of the Wild gigantic, maybe even a little bit bigger, and on the map itself, there is so much to do and discover. Now, let me explain to you how this game is played. There's essentially no rules. Just like Breath of the Wild, you can go and do anything you want for the most part. There are definitely times where you'll want to go and do a certain thing to get past something else, but for the most part, it's open world and you can go and search in the tougher areas and get your ass handed to you. So it's up to you if you want to go out and play the game like that. I'm assuming there's going to be speedrunners that try to beat this game within, say, an hour. You start the game on a very small island, and 4 hours in, you complete the prologue. This is when you start to see the game open up and truly shine. You also start to see the combat evolve into what it will be in the main game. Now, if I wanted to explain every single mechanic in this game, this review would be 4 hours long. So I will say very simple things so you understand what this game is about. You don't pick up weapons in the open world the same way you would in any other game. You essentially get them by doing a little bit of a challenge by taking down a mythical beast and getting it as a reward. Now, these items that you pick up are going to be a sword or an axe. It's simple as that. There's another ability where you can use a hammer, but that isn't considered to be part of your weapons. Now, every single weapon that you will get as a reward will have different stats on it. These get upgraded as you play the game as well. How you upgrade the weapons is quite simple. You have to go out there and break crystals and bring them back to the hub world and spend the crystals on upgrading your gear. So it makes the stats a little bit stronger and makes the weapon stronger as well. Now, alongside your light and heavy attack, you will have abilities. Now, let me break down the combat itself. You're able to dodge just at the last second out of an attack from the enemy, and this will put things into slow motion if you time it correctly. Once you're in slow motion, you can unleash a combo in slow motion. So essentially you're moving at a very high speed while everything slows down. That's really cool in the game, and when you pull it off, it feels rewarding. Now, the second thing you can do in combat is deflect an enemy's attack. So it can be a projectile or it can be a direct hit. The one thing you can't do is block a red attack. So you'll see enemies charge up with a red glow around them. Those mean get out of the way. If it is a white attack, you'll see a white glow around them. You're able to deflect them by hitting two buttons at the same time. The two top shoulder buttons will spin your sword and deflect that attack. Now, when you do that, you get something called a stagger bar, basically on top of them as well. You'll see it right underneath of their health. When this thing fills up, they're completely staggered and they'll fall to the ground and you can get in some serious damage. And last but not least, you have your abilities which tie into all of this. So you have an amazing combo system at your fingertips. And let me just say, once you get deeper into the game, you really start to see it come to life. How do you upgrade those things? Well, there's coins out there in the world that you have to bring back to the main hub and spend on upgrading your attacks or the combos or the abilities. Some of these are pretty cool, such as a mythical challenge where you'll find a harp in the open world and you'll be able to play the notes on it, and then you have to find this gigantic harp and play the exact notes off of the smaller harp you found in the open world, and it will give you coins. It's a really unique kind of fun idea, and I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun trying to memorize the 4 notes and then, get all the way across the map and play them again on the main harp in that section. It really feels rewarding when you pull it off, and it's also sort of an homage to Legend of Zelda because it's, obviously using notes, and Legend of Zelda has always used notes as a form of puzzles. Now, alongside the combat, you have potions like defense and offense, which can be upgraded as well. The one way you heal in this game is by pomegranates, and you can find them in villages or in trees. You simply knock on the tree and they'll fall to the ground. One cool thing is you could take all of this stuff back to the main hub and turn it into a potion, so it's a lot easier to ingest during combat. Because if you don't, you have to sit there and wait for them to eat one, and it barely fills up your health meter, and you will be murdered, because this game is not easy. I should point that out. In the beginning, I thought, oh god, this combat is not fun because it's so difficult. But yeah, the learning curve is there, especially with the blocking. Once you get past that though, oh my god, it's addicting. You'll just want to go into battle and feel that rewarding, accomplishment of just beating some sort of giant mythical beast in the open world. It just feels good. For all you people that like photo mode out there definitely is a photo mode included in here, and I took some pictures and it was a lot of fun fiddling with that. You simply just click in both analog sticks in, photo mode appears, and you could take your photos. So it's cool that that's in here. I do wish they had some filters you could put over it. Maybe that's something that will come down the line. Let me just talk about the different enemy types for a second. There's a whole slew of different enemies, and there's also mounts that you can ride around the open world. For the most part, they're horses that will have different abilities, and you can simply tame them by sneaking up to them. And I should also point out, you can sneak up to an enemy and do a sneak attack, which is really, really powerful to do. There's one other thing that I should point out here that is directly taken from Breath of the Wild. Instead of calling them shrines, they're called rifts. And in this game, you'll find a rift everywhere. They're all over the world. And when you jump into them, guess what? Puzzles. Hope you like puzzles, because it's about doing the puzzle and sometimes fighting enemies. It's Breath of the Wild, but it's a rift. And these are essential because this is where you'll gain the power of Zeus. You'll get some of Zeus's electricity, and I believe from my memory you take that electricity back to the Hall of Gods and use that to upgrade your stamina. One thing I don't want to forget to mention on the PlayStation 5, where I'm reviewing it, is Farsight. This is where you hold R3 in and you get this cool sort of view of the map, and everything that you can do in this map is discovered through vibrations in the right trigger. How it works is essentially it's a heartbeat, and the closer you get to pinpointing something on the map, the heartbeat gets more intense in the controller. When you see R3 on the screen, you hit it and it reveals whatever was there. This is how you're going to discover 99% of the secrets in the game. You don't need to do this, but it is definitely something you'll want to do if you want to upgrade your character, or even search out everything you can do on this section of a map. In closing, this is an experience like I haven't had since Breath of the Wild, and I know I keep bringing that up and saying it's Breath of the Wild, it's Breath of the Wild, because it is. Let's just be honest, it's Breath of the Wild, painted with its own Greek brush. There's no doubt about it that they changed up some of the mechanics and how it feels and how it plays. Combat is definitely a lot harder here. I would say combat is very, very, very solid in this game. It's one of the highlights. The other highlight for me is definitely going around this world. When I say that this is a giant world, I think you need to understand how big the scope is. It is Breath of the Wild for sure in terms of its scope and size. There's so much to do in this game, and it's so addictive that you'll be playing it for minimum 40 hours, minimum. And I think that's even if you're just doing the main stories and a few side stories. This game is massive. I think for completionists, there's at least 70 hours here. I mean, at bare minimum. And then I was even going back to areas that I completed, and I realized that enemy types were even stronger then, in that section where I had defeated them. And there's also challenges that you can unlock in the tower as well, where you have to kill, say, 7 bears, or 20 soldiers, or 20 mythical beasts. You know, when you do these things, you'll get coins, and you could spend these coins at a shop that's within the tower as well. And there's something else I should point out. There are microtransactions in the game. Now, before you lose your mind, they're all just for her costumes and the way things look. It has nothing to do with the gameplay itself. It doesn't change anything. It just changes the visual look of your weapons. And I should also point out that if you have a weapon that you think looks amazing, but you like the stats of a different weapon, you can actually just change the skin of the weapon to reflect the visual representation of the weapon that you like the most. So you can change it up. You don't need to use the same sword the whole game because it has the same power. You could change it visually without affecting its stats. Now, if I had anything negative to say about this game, I think the only thing I could come up with is realistically the world itself doesn't feel lively. It feels bare at times, very bare at times. There's not much going on in some sections of the map, and that's because all of the actual humans in the game have been frozen in time. So that's part of the story. They're turned to stone, and you're playing a mortal. So, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's your job to go and save the day. And in doing so, you're just dealing with monsters and a couple of gods. So, yeah, you're dealing with a limited amount of characters, which kind of leaves the game a little bare at times. But then I could also say on the other side of the coin, there's so much to do in this game that even if you run into a field and you're like, well, there's not much to do, you just go into Farsight, find some sort of, crystal nearby, and just go get it. And you'll have fun going to do that because an enemy might appear. There's also like real-time events that happen where this, I'm not going to spoil it, but the enemy, the main baddie of the game, let's just call him Greek Ganon, he sends one of his minions out to constantly track you as you're going across this massive open world. And at times it's kind of like the Blood Moon from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It just happens and you have to deal with it, and it's difficult, so you have to be prepared for that as well. So this just sounds absolutely insane, but this is definitely one of my top games of the year. Is it my game of the year? I mean, if it could have been, there's a little bit missing for it to be that, but it is definitely in my top 5 games of the year. I can't believe how good this game is. Not that I expected it to be bad, but we all know Ubisoft always releases the games a little bit early. They come out and they fix them. But here, I mean, it is so smooth. It is a 9 out of 10. It is solid. It is a must-own for the system of your choice. I can't speak on the Nintendo Switch version, but PlayStation 5, it looks amazing. It feels like a next-gen experience where things are happening in real time, and it just looks gorgeous. I can't recommend this game enough. I mean, it is definitely in my top 5 of the year. If you're into adventure, RPG, yeah, sure. The game might not have a ton of character, but it has a great story. It has an amazing combat system that will keep you going. It is a blast discovering new areas and discovering all of these, I didn't even get into the temples that you go into and the puzzles and the things you come across in these puzzles and how difficult it can be. And fetch quests are definitely in this game. But I mean, I don't want this to be too long, so I'll see you in the next episode of JKB. If you have any other questions about the game, let me know in the comments below. See you on the next JKB. That was awkward.